All right. Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Hope everybody's having a good day today. We're going to go ahead and get right into it today, guys. And this is going to be off topic of the cult, but we're going to talk some very pertinent dynamics about this cult and human trafficking. So I'm going to go ahead and get right into it. And my source today is DHS.gov, so Department of Homeland Security.gov. This is where I'm getting my information from today. And this is how they define what forced labor is, okay? No doubt the JMMI, KOGGC, Marvels in America, David E. Taylor, Michelle Brannon, that whole cult is a forced labor cult, okay? And this is why I'm going to read the dynamics, and you guys put it into perspective for yourself. I already have. So, what is forced labor? Forced labor occurs when individuals are compelled against their will to provide work or services through the use of force, fraud, or coercion. This crime happens both in the United States and overseas. The International Labor Organization estimated that 24.9 million people around the globe were in forced labor as of 2016. Victims are rarely able to seek help for various reasons. For instance, they may be hindered by language barriers, or they may be physically unable to leave the premises to seek help if their movements are restricted and monitored by their employer, which is exactly what happens with David's cult. These people are monitored around the clock, guys. This is no bullshit. The survivor stories that we have gotten is that there's always somebody watching, there's always somebody listening, there's always somebody with you because they want to make sure you're not saying stuff about the cult. It's a huge eavesdropping cult. Like it's total information control. Just real quick off topic. I was talking to somebody yesterday. I'm going to put this into perspective real quick. It's easy to get somebody to change a decision, right? And I put it into perspective like this. If you had Waffle House and Burger King, which would you choose, okay? It's easy to get somebody to change their mind based on those two different places, right? Burger King and Waffle House. But now let's look at it to get somebody to change their way of thinking, their thought process. Think of what that takes, okay? Think about that for 1 second. Not just to get somebody to change their mind right on the spot, but think how long it takes to get somebody to completely change their whole way of thinking. Think of the patience and the cunning it takes for somebody to do that. And David is exactly that. Again, a few of us think David's possibly dead, okay? Because there's been too many chances for him to come out and capitalize on his cult and make money, and he hasn't done it. So back to the trafficking. Who is affected? Traffickers who exploit people for forced labor do not discriminate. They don't. David does not discriminate. He doesn't care if you're white, black, young, old, fucking mentally ill, whatever. He does not care. If David smells damage on you, if you're a prior assault survivor or family abuse, neglect, whatever, David E. Taylor and Michelle Brannon, David Epstein and Michelle, or Ghislaine Brannon, that's what I call her, because she's the Ghislaine Maxwell of this cult, all right? And David is the Epstein of this cult. They don't discriminate, guys. They don't. David has a thing for white women with blonde hair. That's a given, okay? That is a 100% given that David loves blonde women, okay? That is like a power symbol for him. So say somebody comes in and is looking at David, they're going to be like, oh, look at all these nice looking ladies he's got, you know? But those are just his concubines. That's it. They serve a purpose. That is it. Possibly to bring members in, and most likely to sleep with David. Okay, neither do employers. Victims can be any age, race, religious affiliation, gender identity, or nationality. They may also come from socioeconomic groups, from any socioeconomic group. Certain risk factors, however, may make certain individuals more vulnerable to forced labor than others. These include unstable immigration status, language barriers, poverty and lack of basic needs like food, shelter, and safety. Right, that's what David does. He fucking promises all these people food, shelter, and safety, right? And then at the end, he's going to fuck them over and just leave them high and fucking dry. I guarantee, if anybody is in this cult, this is what David is going to do to you. He's going to bleed you really fucking slow and dry. And when you're sitting there with fucking 10 cents in your hand, you'd be like, oh, where'd all my money go? Well, don't listen to David E. Taylor and Michelle. The psychological effects of a recent past trauma. I know for a fact there's people in this cult that have past traumas. Facts, guys. Facts. I've talked to all kinds of people surrounding this cult. Okay? And yes, there's a lot of past trauma with a lot of these people in this cult. 90% of these people in this cult have past trauma. Lack of social support systems like friends, family, and community. Yes, 100%. Physical or developmental abilities or disabilities. Yes, David, it's like he hones in like a fucking shark in bloody water. When he smells somebody that's like mentally disabled or any kind of post-traumatic, in post-traumatic stress disorder, anything, he is going to hone in on that like a shark, and he is going to dig his fucking teeth in, and he is going to chomp and chomp and chomp and chomp until, he's basically left these people just absolutely nothing and a head full of his fucking bullshit lies and aspirations about him being this great healer and great prophet. Okay, and he's absolutely none of the above. Okay, moving on. Traffickers frequently target vulnerable populations such as children, individuals without lawful immigration status, those with debts, who are isolated, impoverished, disabled, just to name a few. U.S. citizens, foreign nationals, men, women, children can all be victims of forced labor. Absolutely right. They can all be victims. And check this out, guys. Trafficking does not have to involve sex. Okay? Yeah, that's a part of it, because that's a control tactic of traffickers, is sexual manipulation, coercion, all that. It is all part of the tactic. So again, definitely, David is not sex trafficking, but there is a labor trafficking dynamic to this, 100%. What does it look like? Okay, again, guys, this is all coming from dhs.gov. You could look it up, definition of human trafficking. And when you peel back the layers and you start applying these dynamics to David's cult, they all fit. Okay, I've had to do it different times just to make sure they all fit, and every time I try to take one out, they all fit, except the sex part of it. There is a sexual dynamic to the cult, however. There is a sexual component inside the cult, but not the trafficking part. Forced labor indicators often intersect and overlap, feeding into each other. Some signs may be more subtle than others, which is exactly what happens here. For instance, the individual could fall into debt during the recruitment process, compounded by an employer who takes unexpected deductions from their pay. David doesn't pay his staff, though. They're all volunteer staff, right? The worker then cannot repay their debts as quickly as they had anticipated, falling further into debt bondage as a result of both deception and without withholding of wages. Here's the thing. Some of the survivors I've talked to said when they left, they had absolutely nothing. They went there with a lot, and then they left with absolutely nothing. So David does bleed these people dry and then kicks them to the fucking curb and just doesn't give a shit about them. He really won't. And anybody that's mentally ill, he will sink his fingers into you, take you for everything you're worth, and again, kick you to the curb. And David is running, it's like a scam call center. That's what he's running. It's David trolls people's Facebook pages, or has his cult members do it, go and start messaging around, and they have to bring in $1,000 a day. That's what this cult is supposed to do. Bring in $1,000 a day by going to people's Facebook pages and seeing what they're talking about religion, and they start sending out these spam messages that they're all just scripted messages. Okay? This is no bullshit. David has multiple Facebook pages where he's reaching out to people to try and get them to come work for his little fucking labor cult. Let's see. Does an individual appear to be monitored when talking or or interacting with others? Yes, I've had survivors say, yes, absolutely. This is what happens. Whenever there's always somebody monitoring you in this cult. Facts, guys. These are facts coming from eyewitness accounts. And again, these are survivors that I don't tell because they don't want to be fucking known yet. Because they are very scared. They have been very damaged by this piece of shit. And they're scared to come forward and show face because they've actively stalked, death threats, cyber stalking, shit like that. Really weird shit, guys, okay? And absolutely, they're always eavesdropping on your conversations. Are they living in dangerous, overcrowded, or inhumane lodging providing by an employer? Yes, absolutely. They got 4 different big properties now. They have 15400 Timpage, the residential center. They just bought a huge fucking mansion down in Florida, 706 Guasando de Avila from the Buccaneers ex-coach. They also have 18205 Hager Lane, which is just down the street from Nellie's old house at 17329 Hidden Valley Drive. Okay? So they have 4 huge mansions that are all gated. Why would they want 4 big gated mansions? Because they don't want anybody fucking seeing what's going on inside their little religious cult, right? Their fucking forced labor cult. He keeps them... basically, these gated mansions keep the rest of the world out and everybody else in. Full-on information control. Guys, this is not... You can't make this shit up. Are they isolated physically or culturally? Fuck yeah, they are. Yes, they are isolated. Yes, this cult is completely isolated. That's the scary thing about it, everybody, is the fact that this cult is completely isolated from the rest of the world, which makes it fucking scary. A yes to any of these questions could indicate a potential forced labor situation. Bingo, forced labor cult, right? This is coming from the DHS.gov website, guys. Again, survivor testimonies. I have been told by these people, abuse tactics, being on the phones 12, 14 hours a day, running scams through Facebook. This scam is so fucking deep, guys. They have LLCs opened up to buy all these mansions. It's absolutely ridiculous. What they're doing is burying all their names in these LLCs so nobody can find the tax crimes. But I'm finding them. They're opening, this is what these scammy preachers do, is they open up these LLCs and buy these big properties. That, because what does LLC do? It protects the LLC. That way they can't take the assets, the property, shit like that, right? But what he's doing is actually illegal. Indicators of forced labor may take place at any point during the recruitment and employment process. Forced labor could begin during the worker's recruitment process to force the acceptance of the job, to deceive the worker into an exploitative job, or to create a situation of debt bondage by charging recruitment fees that are virtually impossible for the workers to repay. Yeah, David tries to do this with his little inheritance by lineage university. Absolutely. Once a person is working, an employer may also force, defraud, or coerce the victim to perform work not agreed to at the time of the recruitment. David does this, yes. A worker may agree to do a job, find the conditions are not what were expected and agreed upon, but prevented from leaving the job by their employer. I wouldn't say that David. I would agree that David definitely keeps his people from leaving by saying, "Oh, you're going to die," or you're not going to be anything. You're just going to be a piece of shit after you leave here. That's what David does. Is he tells these people that basically they're not going to be shit after they leave this cult, right? After he's ultimately just totally fucking rebuilt them, completely reformed their thought process, not their decision-making process, but their thought process, guys. Think about that for one fucking second. You can change somebody's decision right away, but to change the thought process of a person, man, what does that take? Let's see. Goods produced with forced labor destined for U.S. markets. Let's see. I don't think that will really constitute that. Let's take a peek here. Let's see what else there is. Forced labor. Let's see. And again, guys, this is all DHS website, okay? There's also one here on Interpol. I've looked at that one too. Forced criminal activities. This form of trafficking allows criminal networks to reap the profits of a variety of illicit activities without risk. Victims are forced to carry out a range of illegal activities, which in turn generate income. Absolutely, which David does. This is why it's forced criminal activities. He has his people file for food stamps, then takes the food stamps from them. This is also witness testimony. These could include theft, drug cultivation, which I definitely believe that David is doing drugs, or there's somehow some sort of drugs being purchased on the dark web because this cult takes in cryptocurrency. So think about that for a second. Again, David is not sex trafficking, but however, once he gets these women into this cult, Michelle grooms them. Michelle Ghislaine Brannon grooms them for David. Again, I've seen itineraries, guys. There's people I spoke to overseas that said, yes, David came overseas and slept with me. Yes, there's the itinerary. Here's the times. Here's Michelle's name on the itinerary. So Michelle is actually setting up David's little soirees to go out and sleep with all these women. I mean, I'm trying to sit back, Michelle. What does that do for your self-esteem, knowing that David's out sleeping with all these women, right? After he's no doubt been sleeping with you. Doing the old double dip, huh, Michelle? So, again, forced labor cult, guys. This is a full-blown labor cult. I just read off the definition from the DHS.gov website. You can look it up yourself and apply the dynamics to David's cult and see what you come up with, everybody. See what you come up with. If nothing is done about this, it's going to keep going on. Look at FLDS. You have, there is Jim Jones. I mean, these are all cults, guys. These are all cults. The dynamics are there. The dynamics of human trafficking are there. But once, it's weird, again, talking to a lot of people high up and things like that, when religion gets in the way, say they go knock on the door, right? All the people got to do is say, hey, we want to be here. There's absolutely nothing the government can do at that point. But how about let's look past all that bullshit, right? And let's look at the actual crimes that are being committed, not the religious side bullshit, right? Let's go after the real crimes, the tax fraud, the real estate fucking fraud, money laundering, multiple filings through the IRS. When does this stop, everybody? When does it stop? When we have another People's Temple? What was it? The one out of San Diego, Hellbop, the Heaven's Gate? Is that when this ends? When we have another scenario like that? Or do we stand up and speak about it now before something happens to be proactive before some bullshit like that happens? Or do we just sit back with our heads up our ass like we have in the past and wait for something bad to happen, then do something?